Let's take a look at Annunciator 6.7. We're told to make it so that when anyone dials the DN of 1888, that the call does not go through and meets with the following error. In fact, I'm just going to enhance this and say, let's, in fact, I thought I did. If anyone dials any unknown DN in the system, in from the PSTN or local on net, any unknown DN to any of the sites, then they should meet with the following error. Skinny phones and gateways, which we don't have any skinny gateways, but you could for FXS and FXO, as well as H323 gateways, should hear the message saying your call cannot be completed as dialed. SIP phones and trunks and MGCP gateways should hear reorder tone. Okay? Now wait a minute, I thought for Annunciator earlier we read together collectively in the CUCM SR&D that Annunciator is only supported for skinny-based devices and they must be able to speak the skinny protocol. We did. Let's test it out. First of all, we need to find a way so that any number that is not functioning meets with the proper tone. On RTMT, let's bring up our phones. Let's just say Jack tries to call, and I'll just bring the volume up here so you can hear it. Let's say he tries to call 5995. Okay, he hears that all automatically. If I accidentally left this in there from earlier. Nope, I didn't. Okay. So by default, there's already some Annunciator services. One thing we can do is create a translation pattern that is in a partition that's visible by everyone, so the none partition is perfect, and the calling search space doesn't really matter. We don't really need to provide outside dial tone. Urgent priority would be good. We're going to block this pattern with an unallocated number. Okay, so now phones that are skinny phones, such as Jack, should hear that. Now, that's the same message they did here. If we wanted to change it, we could hear something different. Okay, so are SIP phones able to hear this? Let's just go back and check. Oops, we already have find list phones. Let's do SIP-based phones, of which Hugo, corporate headquarter phone 2, is one. You can hear that. They just meet with reorder tone. Okay, so they don't have Annunciator services. Now, what I've already done ahead of time, and we'll get into the actual configuration of it and all the specifics, all the juicy details tomorrow with gateways, is I've already configured router 2, if we do show CCM, is an MGCP-based router with backhaul. But I've already converted headquarters over to a, we see here, show CCM, MGCP is down, show MGCP, admin state is down, okay? And so what I've done is gone ahead and set up to show run pipe to section dial dash peer, and I've created some very basic information, an inbound dial peer from the PSTN, an outbound dial peer out to the PSTN, which would almost never meet any requirements or satisfy any, but for the sake of our small test will work fine, and a VoIP dial peer bringing any inbound calls from CUCM in, and we'll talk all about direction and ingress and egress of gateways tomorrow. for this session protocol of H323, which is the default, and then outbound, leaving from the gateway to the CUCM to the session target of the pub with the destination pattern of 10 digits. Okay, so let's debug ISDN Q931, and let's show logging, ensure that our termmon is on. It is to 514, which if we do show line, that's us. Okay, so now let's call from the PSTN in, and so we'll just call, actually we'll just call out to the PSTN, it would be fine. We'll pick up the headquarter phone, and we'll just dial 911. Scrolling behind us, go ahead and answer this call. And we see that we have a call active, right? So the gateway set up properly. Actually, let's also debug just so we can be sure. And again, we'll get into these debugs much more tomorrow. Debug H225 ASN1 so that we can see if it's actually H323 that's communicating. And let's call in from the PSTN, so 206.501.1001. Okay, this is all H323 information. See that the headquarter phone 1 is ringing. We get feedback. Okay, so now let's call in to the branch 1 gateway. We've got ISDN running. We could debug H225 ASN1, and we could also debug MGCP messages, packets for this one. And we could debug MGCP packets over here as well. Do that call again through H323. The H323 information, we don't see any MGCP. Let's call in from the PSTN in through the MGCP gateway, which is going to be 512.602.2001. Our ISDN, and now we also see MGCP information, all ringing into Eloise. We could answer, but we don't need to. Okay, so now let's try to call in through MGCP to a number that doesn't exist. So I'm going to undebug all and just debug ISDN Q931. Come over here. We've proven the protocols are working and we know which protocols we're speaking. Now let's just look at the information regarding who called. Now let's call in to 512 into the branch 1 gateway from the PSTN 602.555. Here that we just hear reorder tone when we call into this unknown, unallocated, unassigned number. What about when we call into the headquarter gateway to an unallocated or unassigned number? 206.501.1555. Could everyone hear that? Your call could not be completed as dialed. So we got Annunciator playing us the message. But wait a minute. I thought that for 1888 would work just the same. I thought that the CUCM SRND told us that only skinny endpoints were supported. Well, if you remember back to early studies, hopefully you've done these early studies, skinny, the skinny client control protocol, the whole reason it was named skinny was that it was modeled and very closely taken from H323, which in turn was taken from ISDN Q931, being that the ITUT developed both ISDN and H323. And so skinny really was H323 to begin with a lot of enhancements and modifications, and one of those modifications was the fact that H225, H323 call setup, and H245 media negotiations were way too chatty. And because they were so chatty, so many verbose messages, was going to say Cisco, but it's Celsius, decided, hey, when we create this protocol, Celsius Client Control Protocol, or Skinny Client Control Protocol, it's nicknamed, we're going to make it much skinnier, or much less talky, much less chatty. And so that's really where the name Skinny comes from. But it is a derivative of H323. So even though Cisco Call Manager or the SRND says that Skinny devices are the only ones supported, technically H323 gateways will also play Annunciator messages. MGCP and SIP will not. SIP gateways, SIP phones, well actually SIP trunks, SIP phones, and MGCP will not. Okay, so we've met the requirements for task 7.